Like, God, I hope so and so doesn't join today. Just a mess. We don't have any assholes.
Which we don't say because nobody in our audience is assholes.
Mm-mm. Everybody we know is amazing, and hopefully they're still here even though I'm 12 minutes late.
I did
Otherwise,
post
it'd
a
be
note.
fun. Oh, good. Thank you for doing that. Hi, everybody.
Hello, good morning.
Hi, hi. Data Dubois here, barely.
Apparently, my poor friend is very sick. So, I will be nice to her. I promise. Fortunately, I think I get to do most of the talking today. So that probably helps.
Yes, I think it will. I'm actually feeling a little bit better than I was yesterday, and my Aura Ring confirms I have minor signs, not major signs of being sick, according to its readout. But yeah, my voice sounds awful, and I'm just moving a bit slowly. So apologies for the late start, everybody. Uh-oh, and my phone. Hang on, it just gave me a low battery message, which means I thought it was plugged in all night, but it was not. So let me go get a charger because do you find that the lives drain your phone, Lawrence?
Oh my gosh, the lives drain your phone hugely, like
Yeah.
massively. It's a little bit crazy.
Yes. So if I
I
don't,
Yeah, so I have figured out a way to keep my phone plugged in while I'm doing the lives because otherwise I, either have to end early because my battery's about to die or uh oh, Karen, thank you. Karen's like, if you ever need an emergency co-host, I'd be able to pinch hit. We know you would, and that's amazing that we've got an audience that we trust so much that we've got folks that could jump in and pinch hit for us, which we'll probably need to do at some point because we're bound to get sick or go on vacation or something like that
right?
someday.
Yeah. We're not single points of failure, but we're double points of failure, I
Right.
guess.
Robin, hello, Robin.
Hello. Oh, Karen, I'm sure you would be. I already know for Monday that you would be. You would be fine. I mean, you wouldn't have the 45 years of history with Lawrence, but you are delightful on camera. Um, Morning, Robin,
Good
and
morning, Robin.
apologies for my voice and maybe low energy. I did notice yesterday, I'm s vanity moment that, the first time it captures you, that's sort of the screenshot it uses, and you can say, "Update the screenshot." I found it doesn't always take because
Right.
the one from yesterday, I'm, like, turned to the side and I'm, like, jowly and I look miserable. So today I'm gonna try to be bright and smiley. Here, let's smile for the shot we can take.
I'm sure that looks very sincere.
Nothing deranged looking about that at all. Um, mm, so I'm gonna be talking I'm gonna have an even lower voice than usual. I'm gonna
Oh,
try to
perfect.
modulate down here,
Right. Karen,
as I
Karen, here comes Dana with some ASMR. So
oh god, no, not this would be like you're trying to fall asleep and I come on and you're like, "Ugh, don't do that. Don't
Right.
talk like that."
Hello.
Oh,
Listen to me as I clear my throat.
oh my god, that's a nightmare one.
Hello.
Don't do that. I can't breathe. Oh my god, that was so funny. I love ASMR, um, if we're having revelatory moments, and I will often fall asleep with headphones on, listening, and it'll just continue to play as I sleep. And you know what? Okay, so if you ever did that in my ear, I would definitely wake up very quickly, horrified. But the thing that always wakes me up is that, hey, Patrick, sometimes it will roll over to like a 12 hours of rain outside your window. That shit always wakes me up. Because I think I'm hearing a storm. I don't know,
Right,
I
right.
hate it. I
Because in
hate those
Seattle,
things.
you can't really hear the rain most of the time. And so if you hear rain, it means that there's a really, really big storm happening.
Yeah, I've woken up many times in the middle of the night to like, "What the fuck is that?" And I'm like, "Ugh, it's just the video," and I take the headphones off. Anyhow, that was not an interesting story, but you know what was an interesting story, Lawrence?
Ooh, what a segue. She's a pro, folks.
I am. Um, so Lawrence, published a new story, and by story, I don't mean, some nonfiction commentary about the state of the world. I mean a literal, short story, a speculative fiction story. And I'm gonna tell a tiny story about this that 2 nights ago, as I was starting to be like, "I really feel like I'm getting sick. I'm going to bed early." Lawrence had forwarded me a Word doc version of a story and said, "Please, can you copy edit this?" And I was like, "Of course." And I opened it and was like, "It's 50 fucking pages. Oh my god." But the pages were short because it was in manuscript format and the story was riveting. And there were not that many edits, and overuse of ellipses. We haven't talked about edits, but, that was my one thing where I was like, "Don't need them here. Don't use them here." I think that is a Gen X thing that when we think about conversation, we sometimes write with a lot of ellipses. Maybe every generation does.
Yeah, I need to find a better device to illustrate. Like, I've said a thing and then I'm pausing because I'm deep in thought and then I'm saying my next thing. There just isn't a great way to do that other than ellipses. And, my conversational style is full of dramatic pauses to begin with, because my poor little brain can't always, process fast enough. So, yeah, it's an interesting style thing because I try to write conversations, as accurately as I can, but I don't know how to do that without ellipses.
Right. I don't write fiction, but when I write nonfiction, I don't worry about the pauses because I think that, you know, a reader reading it will hear it as they wish to. I need a literary device that tells the reader brain is loading.
Yes, Robin. Yes, exactly. Like, is there an emoji that I can put into my fiction that shows, like,
Right.
brain is thinking?
So before we jump into your story, Lawrence, which is wonderful, it is called The Book of Deek. I want, I think most folks on this call have heard this, or at least a lot of them have, but I want you to first speak to your muse because we learned a few conversations ago. It was the one with Walter, right? Writers on Writing with Walter, where you revealed that you have a muse who delivers you stories from time to time. Please tell us about your muse.
Yeah. So I'm not being metaphorical here, right? This isn't some kind of like literary device that I'm using. I mean that, um, for a very long time now, there is an entity that delivers stories to me. And, uh, I, so for those of you who don't know, I am a bit woo woo, on, it kind of in my personal belief side.
And we love you
Um,
for it.
right. And, I worked, one of my other dear friends, Shar Sundust, is a shamanic practitioner, and I worked with her for years, just kind of through our friendship, and became quite adept at journey work and visualization, which is kind of like lucid dreaming, essentially, through meditation, and have had very vivid encounters with uh, entities and power animals and the like. And so when I say that there is a muse, who is a kind of a fey, non-binary sprite who brings me things, I often kind of think of them wearing combat boots because I feel like lately, in particular, and by lately I mean like the last 5 to 10 years, maybe they've gotten pretty aggressive with the idea of like, hey, asshole, if you want to be a writer, you need to write. And if you need ideas, I'm bringing them to you all the fucking time. So, like, write one, which
Mhm.
I've started doing. Um, and the other morning, I was having kind of one of those morning dreams, which sometimes for me seem very, very vivid and very memorable. And as I was waking up, they kind of dropped this dream into my head, and I woke up enough to think like, oh wow, like that's a good story. I should write that. And then I kind of like looked at the time and rolled over, and I, I you know, literally they kind of kicked me in the head. Like I jolted, and I was like, oh, okay, I got it. I got to get up and write. And so I did. It's not, you and I are not morning people, Dana. We've admitted this many times. And so, I kind of realized, there's sort of the idealized, writers get up early and write,
Fuck that,
a
no.
thousand words before their day
Writers
gets
stay
started.
up all night and write. Well, some
Right.
get up.
Yeah. I'm much more, anyway, I got up. It was, I don't know, like 6:45 or something. I got up and I started writing. And, in that one day, I produced 5,000 words, which is far more than I usually produce in a single in a
Right.
single day. That's right. Robin says writers stay up late like literate vampires. Exactly. Exactly. Um, and the
My
full
TNA
story,
cheers you.
the full story ended up being 10,000 words, which, pushes short story into the verge of, short novella kind of. Um, but, I was very, very clear kind of about what the story was and the paces it needed to go through and what I needed to write.
That is wonderful. I can't wait till you find out your entity's name, so I don't have to just keep saying them. But the combat boots really helps. I'm picturing kind of a tulle skirt, a long tulle skirt with combat boots, because you said Faye. That's why that popped in my head.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. Uh,
I'm
um,
picturing a femme leaning non-binary literary
Absolutely. They're absolutely femme leaning. Who's the character Tonk from Harry Potter, right?
punk. Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
A
Oh,
bit a bit
punks.
in that
Mm.
vibe.
Sorry, Kira's here being very lovey this morning.
Aw.
Um, I love that. And why
Oh my
I
goodness.
yeah.
Karen says she stayed up for 24 hours straight last week and wrote like a maniac. Robin called her weird.
Yeah,
Karen, wow, yeah.
I need more water for my tea. That's I 24 I can't do a 24 hours well. Even in college, Lawrence, I always had to like I could pull an all-nighter, but that would go till like 5:30 and then I'd sleep for an hour or two before getting up for the test. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
couldn't go straight from the study to the test. There had to be some form of sleep even if it was nominal. I have a really small tea mug today. Do you need to go out? Do you need to go outside? Um, Here we are minute by
She's talking to
minute.
me.
Yeah, no, I'm talking to the dog. Do you no, you the dog is she's so smart. I mean, for a dog, she still rolled in her poop yesterday and I had to bathe her before I went into work. But she's smart enough to know, oh yay, I'm wheezing a little bit. Um, that when I am doing something like this, that I will just give her treats because I want her to leave me alone. So hold on, let me get one out of my work bag here. While I'm doing this, Lawrence, why don't you tell everybody? Oh, great, they're not in here. Tell us about the story, and then I want you to read a passage from it. But can you first kind of do an overview of what the story is about?
Sure. So I am a science fiction writer. It is my chosen genre. It is, the form of reading that I discovered. It's the genre that I discovered that really hooked me into reading science fiction and fantasy, and more science fiction over the years than fantasy, to be honest. Um, and and so it's the way that I approach writing, and it's the way that I approach the world. So, for me to be a writer, really the only kind of path open to me is science fiction and speculative fiction and fantasy, because those are my jam, my genre. As
In addition to the occasional political rant, but continue.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to nonfiction, like give me politics to rant about, but when it comes to creative writing, it's spec fic and sci-fi and fantasy for sure. Um, and because I am who I am, and I'm partly writing pieces of content that I wish kind of I'd had a chance to read when I was coming up. I All of my work is queer themed in some form. And when I started writing, that wasn't an intentional thing. It took me a while to realize that the stories that I was gravitating to were were queer. And it really is, I think, just as simple as there was nothing in sci-fi and fantasy when we were growing up that really represented queer folks in any way. Like I would have died to for even the passing mention of a gay character. There's something, in a Heinlein book I remember at the beginning where he kind of casually mentions that the main character is narrating, kind of casually mentions that he's bi and that he just had sex with a guy. And like, that was everything for me. I was just like, oh my God, say more about that. And it's literally never talked about again in the entire book. Right. Um, so, so this story, I'm going to get maybe extra woo here. Because I feel like in my life as a gay man, kind of in the course of coming out and really figuring out who I was, there was this what I really wanted, what I've really been searching for my whole life is kind of a best friend who becomes a lover, right? Who where there's kind of deep knowledge of the other person and kind of a revelation that things have transcended into a romantic relationship. Um, and so this story is it's rooted in all of those things, really. Um, and it's interesting, we can dig into this more. I'm excited to dig into this more over the course of this morning, but like we're Jewish, right? Like I was raised Jewish. Like the stuff that I know about Christianity is what any person gathers through osmosis by living in this country that is, ostensibly has free religion, but which is really a country dominated by Christian people, often talking loudly about their faith. And sorry, Christian friends, I hope I'm not offending you, but growing up Jewish in this country, you're very, very aware of like, oh, this isn't my religion, or it's
Right.
you know, we're the first half of the Bible, but then you guys went and wrote a whole other book about this guy without us.
Right. Who was Jewish, by the way.
Right, who was Jewish, but yeah, exactly. So,
So
um,
true. I'm gonna put in a little asterisk there and saying, I think being raised in a religion that less than 1% of the United States follows has guided a lot of my adult ethos in life. Like, the ability to let a lot of things go because you learn when you grow up knowing you're in the minority of something,
right,
um, and religion being ours, like, that has helped me be a lot more adaptable, but that's a topic for another day.
yeah.
I hear you. Carry on because this is a very, this is a very Jesus story. Keep it going.
Robin admits that she just Googled speculative
I
fiction so that she could pretend like she understood what it was. Um, Robin, honestly, I got that entirely from Margaret Atwood because Margaret Atwood is Margaret Atwood. She is an empress of the word and it
and
should be
Canadian, and
and a
Canadian.
Canadian and should be worshipped, rightly as the amazing writer that she is. And I think she didn't want to be pigeonholed into sci-fi, and so she refers to Handmaid's Tale and Oryx and Crake and the Last Flood, her more science fictiony books as speculative fiction, which makes a lot of sense when you think about it, because Handmaid's Tale is absolutely brilliant, and the only thing that made it science fiction was the fact that it was sort of a dystopian future, right? There was nothing particularly sciency about it. And so speculative fiction has become a very trendy word, a way for writers like me to describe themselves when they don't want to scare people who might say, "Oh, I don't read science fiction." Oh, no, no, this is speculative fiction. It's very
Yeah,
different.
it's like the plant-based food for vegans, right? Like, people don't wanna say vegan, but plant-based is fine.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, this is this is
Rebrand.
the sparkling speculative fiction from the
Yeah,
Champagne region of France or whatever.
wonderful. Where did we leave off? So, you were talking about the plot of the story and your wish to have found a lover who grew from someone who was a friend who you had a deep connection with,
Yeah.
and, do you wanna speak to the plot of the story at all beyond that, or is that enough of a summary?
So the thing that really intrigued me about this, well, there are a couple things, right? Like I'm very keen on exploring the idea of free will and the idea that you know, fate or astrology or um, prophecy or uh the many worlds theory of quantum mechanics, that there are that somehow we all still feel like we all still have free will in this universe. We have the ability to choose. A burden may be given to us, but we have the ability to choose whether or not we accept it or how we deal with it. And
Mhm.
uh and maybe, I don't know, maybe that's speculative, right? Like, I'd like to think we live in a free will universe. That's a very important thing for me personally,
Right.
philosophically, to believe in. Um, so I kind of really wanted to explore that. And then I've always had this kind of idea knocking around in my head of, um, if you look at prophecy, right? If you look at Nostradamus or Revelations or something, kind of the idea that the apocalypse, the end of the world, is approaching, right? And Jesus was 33 at the time of his crucifixion, and so for a while I've kind of been like, well, if that's true, then like there's some person walking around right now who is, in theory, the second coming. Like, this person isn't just gonna. I mean, immaculate conception notwithstanding, this person isn't just going to materialize out of thin air, right? Like, they must be living and having experiences and gathering their disciples. If in fact the prophecy is true and this thing is happening, then so I've always kind of toyed with that idea of like, wouldn't it be interesting to write a story about somebody who, you know, thinks they're living a normal life and then sort of discovers, oh shit, maybe I've been chosen for this thing and I've got to choose, I've got to figure out. So this story, when the muse dropped it into my head, kind of keyed off of those things that I wonder about and think about a lot. And so that was part of why it was so compelling to me and why I had to write it.
I that, contextualizes the story a lot for me, thank you. Would you like to read a
Sure.
passage of the story? Geez, vocabulary, you guys, I'm sorry. For those of you just joining, this is day 2 of being sick, and that's why I sound like this. I'm also a little slow, so bear with me. But Lawrence, please, in your beautiful mellifluous voice,
Yes.
yes, read us a passage of the Book of Deek.
Okay. I think I'm just going to read the first section, because it introduces the story, and then I think kind of cuts off in an intriguing enough place that maybe people will be compelled to go read the remainder. Um, this will
Actually,
probably.
do you
Yeah.
wanna
Go ahead.
cut and paste the link into the chat here in case
Oh,
people do
yeah.
wanna, read along or find it? We'll also put it in the recap of the story, of course,
Yes.
when we post the video, but just in case you would like to have it now.
I sort of like that. The way we've structured the daily whatever so far, kind of by intent, but also a little by accident, is that you never know what you're going to get, folks. Some days we might be interviewing people. Some days we might be reading from our own work. Some days we might be raging about Trump has made a deal with the United Kingdom and blah, blah, blah. He thinks it's so great,
He
which is
made a deal
actually,
with the United Kingdom? Did I miss
yeah,
that?
he's announcing it today. He's announcing it right now, as a matter of fact. You could listen to me read my story, or you could go listen to Trump ramble on about what a genius he is making a
Oh
deal with the UK.
oh my god, okay. Yeah, I don't wanna read his version. I'd rather read listen to your version of speculative fiction than his, so,
Yay.
you should I don't in case you didn't notice the comment, Karen said that she has already read your story and that it's great.
Aw, thanks, Karen. Awesome. All right, so here we
Awesome.
go. So this is the Book of Deek. The subtitle is What Do You Do When You Think Your Boyfriend Might Be the Second Coming? I was going to start this by saying it's not like I'd always had a crush on Troy Wettinger, except that's the kind of lie that could only be made true if I finished it with, but that's because it was more than a crush. I was madly in love with him from the very beginning. It's the kind of lie I've been telling myself and everyone else for nearly 10 years now. And I guess I owe you that truth because the rest of this is going to come across as hard enough to believe that I should play this as straight as I can, which is a joke about how gay I am, but you couldn't have known that yet. I'm Deek Passamore Jr., and one of the first ways I distinguished myself from my old man, Deacon Deek Passamore Sr., was that I cleverly spelled our shared nickname Deek. He didn't like it, but then we didn't like each other much to begin with, or end with, for that matter. I'd met Troy in Pee Wee football when we were both 9. We were from small adjacent farm towns out near Warsaw, Indiana. He was from Wessup, and I was from Dolphang. And if you try to look those up on a map, you probably won't find them because they really were that small. No stoplight towns that were more corn and soybeans than people, you know? The kinds of places where two little boys could ride their bikes on dirt roads to get back and forth to each other's houses and not be threatened by anything more than a herd of deer or a big John Deere tractor. But by the time we were in middle school, we were in the same school building and fast friends. We'd have sleepovers at each other's houses. We'd help each other with our chores. We schemed endlessly about how to get things done faster so that we could go to a game or a movie or just hang out at the small pond that was halfway between our farms. When I think about Troy, I think about my childhood and vice versa. He was so much a part of it, we might as well have been brothers. When his mom died, he stayed enough nights at my house that it was like we'd adopted him. Years later, when my pa ran off, well, Troy's dad didn't become my replacement pa, but it felt like between us, we had enough people to cobble together a little family, and that was something. We talked about everything boys talk about, I guess. Football and basketball, video games and movies and comics, farming, trucks, soldiers, dirt. Damn near everything except girls, or only in the most abstract way if we talked about girls at all. None of that struck me as weird, not until we got to high school. And even then, I suppose it took me a long time to tune in on the raging hormones that surrounded us, because by then, two other things had managed to distract me completely. One of them was Troy, or more precisely, his body. When I tell you he was handsome, I think I accidentally diminished the meaning of words. He was stunning, transforming from a skinny twerp who I'd been able to beat at wrestling for years into a 6'3", blonde-haired, blue-eyed paragon of Americana manhood. Believe me, I was not the only one who noticed. In fact, I think it was impossible for anyone to not notice. Except Troy. I'm not kidding you with that. Everyone in a 5-county radius knew who he was, and yet somehow he only had eyes for me. As a friend, and a friend only, I was sure at the time. But later events cleared me up on that, I guess. Just too late to do us any good. We were Troy and Deek, or Deek and Troy, either way, but always one word together, more inseparable than Mutt and Jeff, my Grammy used to say. Not that I knew that reference. But by the time we got to high school, after puberty had well and truly kicked in, something happened to Troy. The rest of us were flooded with hormones, filling out and filling in, and generally speaking, becoming men and women, as hundreds of millions of our ancestors had done before us. And mind you, this was happening to Troy too, him becoming the paragon of manhood I've already described. But the second thing was that something else happened to him, and only a him. It was like God turned on the hormones tap inside him, and then also leaned over and turned on the divinity tap to boot. It's taken me so long to write this down because I don't know how else to explain it. It was like he radiated light in a set of colors the human eye can't see but longs to. The natural world could see it, and boy howdy. I'm not just talking about birds and bees, but also literally birds and bees. Troy would no sooner step outside than he could hold out a hand and have a bird land in it, happy as a clam to have found this human, chirping to him like it was delivering him the dark-eyed Junko headline news, or the latest decisions from the high command of the common grackles. One spring afternoon that was already warming into summer, I finished my chores and went over to his place, and I found him sitting out in the back 40 behind his house. This was a hilly meadow that had a creek winding through it. His pa didn't farm it because it was too rocky and steep, and besides, the creek drew the deer, and that was a prize for hunting season. He was just sitting there in a beam of sunshine, and I shit you not, he was covered in birds and butterflies and bees and crickets, but not in a human being ripped to shreds by critters kind of way, more like he was holding court, talking to them, and this wise council of the meadow was consulting with him on matters of most supreme, mundane importance. He turned to me, sensing I was there, and smiled so beatifically that it was as if the whole universe had fixed me in its spotlight and decided that I was the main character of the day. I've only ever felt that radiance a couple of times since, and almost all of them were with Troy. The flotilla of critters rose off him as one and headed towards me, not menacing, but rather as if a charming parade of festival goers had come to welcome the newest arrival. They touched on me briefly, a gentle hailstorm of quick landings and departures that left me swooning with a feeling of peace and welcome, and also a deep melancholy longing, because as quickly as it all happened, it was over. It's hard to be a human and to finally feel that love and acceptance from the world writ large, and then to have it disappear just as quickly. Maybe most of us aren't designed for that. Maybe that's why some of us turn to ever harder drugs to find that touch of joy and light, and then keep chasing that high. I pulled him up off his feet, and he bumped into me in a rough hug and a flash of white teeth, and we fell into conversation without ever addressing what I'd just seen.
That was beautiful, Lawrence, and it's reminding me of something I've thought a lot about in the last few weeks of, like, why don't we stop reading to one another? Like, oh my god, I have goosebumps from Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah.
First of all, as you know, you have a beautiful speaking voice. Um, but, like, I read to my kids growing up, and, it is a wonderful thing to be read to. It's mesmerizing. Maybe that's why people like audiobooks so much. Now I need to have Lawrence read all my books to me,
Right.
right?
We'll discuss my fee later, Robin. Thank you very much.
Oh, don't make me laugh, it hurts. Um, that was beautiful. It is more beautiful to hear you read it even than to read it myself. Um, I don't wanna ask questions that reveal the ending of this story.
I, I've been
So
thinking about this, and I very much want people to read it, of course.
yeah.
But I don't know how we can talk about it deeply without kind of doing some spoilery stuff. So, spoiler alert: if you want to read it and be surprised, I guess maybe drop now. But I do want to talk a little bit about the ending. So go ahead, ask whatever.
Okay. My I have so many questions about this one. I first, though, wanna say that as someone who knew you when you were Deek's age, what struck me the most about this story is I was like, "Oh, Lawrence built the high school experience of love he wanted." This
Absolutely.
blonde, Adonis, kind, gentle, strong, masculine man who discovers his best friend is actually he wants to be his lover. Like,
Yeah.
that is absolutely what you always wanted,
Right.
which
Yeah. I absolutely, like, I feel like the story in a way is kind of like healing that old wound, right? Like
that's
my
exactly.
original love wound is that there wasn't some Adonis in high school who was like, "You're special." Like, I don't know why, but I like you better than I like any of the girls.
Right. We can pause with there was no Adonis in high school, period, but
Right, right,
also
right.
there
Narrow your voice. There was no Adonis in high school who found
y
Lauren special.
there was just no Adonis anywhere, and also there was it was we graduated high school in 1988, like, there were no gay people at our high school, right?
Right.
Wink, wink,
Wink,
nudge,
wink, nudge,
nudge,
nudge. Yeah.
because there were no gay people unless there was that one guy who was so obviously gay that he couldn't hide it, and he got teased mercilessly, so, um, ha hands up for the generations after Gen X who made it okay to be gay
Right.
in high
Thank
school.
you.
Yes, thank you. Um, Here's a question that I had in reading this. Although, wait, before I go on, I will say I didn't feel like you were Deek. Like, Deek did not feel autobiographical necessarily,
Yeah.
but
Deacon.
it's he's different from you, and
Yeah.
also he's addressing your, like, origin story of love, which I loved. Um, you make a nod at the very start, which I love when writers can nod to a bunch of things with a line. Like, I'm not digging into this, but I'm giving you this, right? Hold on. Brandon says I was born at the wrong time. When were you born, Brandon? Are you also Gen X?
I don't think Brandon is Gen X.
Yeah, I don't
Brandon
either.
looks like millennial, zennial kind of to me.
Hard to say, but was born at the wrong time. If you want to elaborate on that, please do. And if anyone has questions, please jump in the chat. We're keeping an eye
Oh
on
yeah,
it.
my goodness! Please jump in. Robin is going. She's got 3 buttons in pocket lint that she's going to pay me with. You know what? I'll take it. Papa,
Yes, it's
Papa works for free these days.
for Lint. Absolutely. Um, you nod at the beginning to the fact that Deek's father was the deacon, which is very clever play on their names as well. And then you don't really mention religion again. So do you think that Deek or Troy were religious people? It's not baked into the story really about their religious upbringings or their beliefs held at that time. And my apologies, I'm gonna walk again while you answer because I need more I have too small of a teacup and too raspy of a throat. So where is like where is religion in the subtext here?
Yeah, I so having been back in Indiana for a year now, it's interesting to me that there's a paucity of gay people, like out gay people here.
Shocking.
And I think at least part of it is because Warsaw is not too far from where I am in Indiana. And the town that I'm in is called the town of churches because, oh, good Lord, there's so many churches here. And all of northern Indiana is kind of like that.
Wait, you live in
Um,
a town called the Town of Churches?
Fort Wayne is the town of churches. Yes.
Oh, that's like the tagline.
Yeah, I mean, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Like it's one
Wow,
of those
I
things that
didn't know
people
that.
like to say.
Okay, I didn't know that. Carry on.
Yeah. So religion is very much a part, and Christianity specifically is very much a part of Indiana life. And so uh, I imagined as I was writing them that they went to church on Sundays because they had to, but that neither one of them felt particularly drawn to it. Um, and I didn't want to dig deeply into religion in this story because a like if it was a novel, I absolutely would. But for a short story, it would suck too much oxygen out of what I really wanted the story to be about. So I intentionally ignored it.
Interesting. So there's sort of the understood religious ethos in the town
Right.
because of where it's taking place. Because that was one thing I wondered was I was like, here's a story about the narrator's best friend and love is the second coming. He's realizing that he's the second coming, but it doesn't overtly state his religious beliefs, or if he's like, "Oh my God, it's Jesus," or if he's like, "Oh God, there's Jesus." It's more about his worship of this one person, and I'm using the word worship in a loving way, not in a religious
Right.
way. Okay, so
Yep.
I've got that part down. Let's talk a bit about, um I'm trying to think of which question and which direction to go in next. Talk about how desire is worked into this story, and I'm gonna clarify my question a bit because you have, you know, 2 boys who grow into young men. The narrator is in love with him during the story. For most of the story, though, it's not filled with sexual longing, but then there'll be, like, a couple times where you're dropping a bomb in about him being hard, and it, and by hard, I mean erect, not difficult. And when I was reading it, it was almost jarring to hear desire in a again, I'm getting feedback on my voice. Is anybody else hearing it?
Mm-mm.
Okay, I'll carry on. Um, if it had been anyone else or any other story, I might have been like, "This feels jarring to suddenly have a sexualized comment in the middle of the story." But talk to me about this is a little bit of a vague question, but how is desire, like actual physical teenage boy desire, woven into this story alongside the heart, which is very clear the whole story?
Yeah. I mean, that's a good question. And so I could write smut, right? Like
Yeah.
I do write smut. I won't tell you where it is, but I do. And this could have easily been a smut story, right? And I very much didn't want it to be. And I guess they're kind of a couple competing things here, right? So one is having been at one point in my life a gay teenage boy, the the inevitability of inconvenient boners is like just a reality, a thing, right? I didn't want to veer into the masturbatory and that kind of thing because somebody is hard to write, Karen, and I'm really fucking good at it. It's actually probably the thing I'm best at writing. Um, but I didn't want to do that here. I wanted to acknowledge sort of the I guess I'm struggling here a bit, right? Because the reality of the situation is, in my mind, if I was being honest, these kids they would have had sex with each other already, right? Like the most unrealistic thing in the story to me is the fact that both of these guys are attracted to each other and didn't have sex with
Right.
each other, right? And I think that kind of goes into the underlying sort of unspoken religiosity of the place that they're growing up in. And also because, I wanted there to be kind of some dramatic and I wanted to toy with this idea of Troy um sorry, spoiler alert, leaves this world a virgin as far as we know. And uh the, kind of a play almost a play on the Immaculate Conception, right? Because it's a story about gay guys being in love with each other. It could have been very smutty and very much about the sexual element, but it wasn't. It was about the other forms of love that people have for each other.
Yes. Well, what I read into it, and this may not, whenever you put a story in the world, people bring their own lived experiences to it. Um, what I read into it is that, like, the media will always portray teenagers as a bunch of, hormone monsters, but there is, um, at least for some, and I know we were like this sense of, like, longing for a true love, a soulmate, even more than a sexual partner when you were that age. This idealized, like, "I will find love one day." And, I felt like Deek as a narrator was still naive and a child coming of age, not a teenage man. Do you know what I mean? And so, I know there was the narrative device of, like, "Oh, he would never be, gay for me." He but there's also a purity to how he loves him that's more important than desire.
Right. Well, yeah, you and I are both Dan Savage fans, right? And
Yeah.
Dan has kind of this, trope that he talks about, um, that gay people sometimes like the day they come out is sort of like their birthday, right? And then whatever
Mhm.
developmental cycles somebody would experience, whatever developmental cycles a straight person would experience, like being 16 and in high school and dating, and maybe you have your first sexual experiences and you're figuring things out, and then you go to college and you have your first big love and disappointment, and gay people experience that all on a delayed timeline, right? And what
More
felt
so in
real
the
about
past. More so in the past, probably,
more
for
so
sure.
in the past, for sure.
Yeah.
And what felt real in the story to me was like they haven't had sex with each other. I didn't have sex until, I mean, you know this because we've known each other forever. I gave one blowjob when we were in college, and that was it. I didn't have sex until I was like 23. And um so it was a little bit of that, like they
But
they
you
they're
you
for
have this. Oh, sorry, keep going.
well, no, like, and for me, it was partly like, I want to find my soulmate. I want to fall in love. I want the white picket house with the white picket fence, and we
Yeah.
adopt 2.3 kids. And,
Clearly, I've given up on a lot of this. I've changed my mind.
but, um, yeah, that was an element of the story too, was like sort of them getting to experience this idealized romantic love that wasn't. So I see Brandon says, I've often used sex as a replacement for intimacy. I think that's true for many, whether or not they admit it. And I absolutely agree that that's true. And this story represents a phase in my life where I was really far more interested in the romantic side of intimacy than I was. I mean, I was interested in sex, but what I wanted was romance first.
Yes. And romance and the ability to, yeah, to be seen, I think is such a big part of this, of like, to be seen by a hero, someone who
Right.
you.
Right. To be seen and to be wanted by somebody that you wanted to feel that way about you.
Yes, I that comes through, like, blazingly clear and beautifully in this story, which I loved. And there is a scene, toward the end, spoiler alert, plug your ears if you don't wanna hear this, um, where they admit their love for each other, and they do kiss, and then there's a scene that it's rather ambiguous what happens, or what's happening to us, the reader. And you just saying Troy leaves this world a virgin, I'm like, "Okay, so it wasn't sex, because 'cause I'm not sure." We were like, it was a form of connection that, like, it's, like, otherworldly, transcendent. It is what one might describe a, like, dazzling sexual experience about. What do you envision was happening in that scene, if not sex? And is it intentionally ambiguous?
Um, I guess it's intentionally ambiguous the way that I wrote it. And sorry, I'm going to reference Rick and Morty, which is a an obnoxious and vulgar animated show that's on recently. There's an episode of Rick and Morty where Rick and a dragon soul bond, and they experience, it's, you see it in the cartoon. They're sort of experiencing this sexual like pleasure, even though they're not, having actual sex. And that's kind of what I imagine was happening, right? Was that, Deek, the narrator, is kind of saying, like, we didn't have sex. I don't think we had sex. I'm pretty sure we didn't have sex. It's he's pretty sure that there was, no penis in hole kind of experience going on. But what was happening was a physical, romantic, mental, emotional, psychic splendor and rapture that I
Hmm.
think we'd imagine, I think many of us would like to imagine that that's what having transcendent sex is like, that you're having this incredible physical, mental, emotional experience. And maybe it isn't so much about whose parts are in other parts as it is just simply that the experience is being had and both people kind of walk away from it transformed.
I love that. Um, I know we're at the top of the hour because we started late thanks to my cold. So thanks for holding on with us here. Again, I want to talk about the ending without. So if you don't want to have the end of Lawrence's story spoiled, plug your ears or mute or drop if you must, though I don't want you to drop anybody. So in the end, um, Troy Troy declines his role as the second coming because of his love for Deek,
Right.
because he can see these infinite futures, and in all of them, he knows he will be destroyed, and that in the process, it will destroy Deek,
Right.
and he doesn't want that for himself. As I read it, and Deek goes on to narrate what happens after he loses Troy, I kind of felt like Deke got destroyed by the experience a bit, and I was like, "Well, couldn't Troy see that?" So talk to me about the ending and kind of do you see it as an ending and then it's sort of comedic almost at the end where you realize where he is, where he's telling this story. Could Troy see all of that?
Yeah.
Is it one of
Absolutely.
is it the happiest of the endings that Troy
Yeah.
could see?
It was
And
the only way for Deke to survive and live and have a chance at future happiness. And I think, and I don't know, maybe it would be more interesting if I didn't answer and left this ambiguous. But as I was writing it, it was absolutely Troy chose not to be the second coming because he wanted to protect Deke as much as he possibly could and allow him to live and allow him to have a life to choose because free will is sort of the point of the story. And the only future in which that was really possible was one in which Troy declines and is removed from the earth, and Deke has a chance to go live his life, right? And I think Troy knew that Deke would be suffering because he had experienced this transcendent, I think Deke says it at some point in the story of like, he was my boyfriend for 5 minutes, until he told God no. And then Deke goes on to have, what I think many would consider to be a tragic life where for 10 years he's, addicted to sex and drugs and, trying to find his way, trying to fill the emptiness that's inside him. Um, but then ultimately, we hope at the end of the story is like pulling his life back together. And, as the author, what I see, I shouldn't say things like this because it programs people's interpretation of the story too much. But what I see that is the moment where Deke is having his, it's not like Paul on the road to Damascus, right? It's not that kind of conversion event. It's more like St. Francis of Assisi, right? Like what Deke needs is to go experience sort of the vileness of the world. Like he's had it in inverted order. He had redemption and bliss and literally the direct love of God. And then he loses it. And so he does a St. Francis, right? He does drugs and fucks around and lives a very earthy life, but then has the ability to come back to it and say, hopefully God hasn't forgotten me. Like I've never forgotten him. Hopefully he hasn't forgotten me. And so for me, it was kind of like a conversion event by the very end of the story.
I love that, and I have to admit because both Hebrew school growing up and also, like, profoundly irreligious, I'm like, "What were those things?" I didn't know that about Saint Francis, I just know he liked plants and animals. And who was the other one you named?
Well, Paul, the Apostle Paul.
I don't know what Paul did. Who the fuck
Oh.
is Paul? I'm, like, profoundly irreligious, I'm sorry.
Why do you think there's so many people in our world named Paul and Matthew and Mark and Michael?
Oh,
Where do you think those names came from?
I know they're all biblical names. I just don't know their actual plot lines because
Yeah.
I don't know their actual plot lines.
This is probably because I took a course in college called The Bible as Literature, which
Yeah.
was a really interesting class. And I don't know. So another thing I'll say, another thought that I had that I kind of wanted to talk about was, um, in a lot of ways, this is like the most anti-Bechdel test story ever.
Oh,
It's two male characters who the story is only about them interacting with each other. There's only one female character. She's only window dressing. She, is only serving as a two-dimensional kind of
right.
cutout that serves the purpose of the story and appears to have no agency or action of her own. Um, so sorry,
It's a
sorry,
gay
Anna
love
Bechdel, I
story.
completely
Yeah.
failed in this one, but
No, it's a gay love story, Lawrence. It's fine, and it's a short story, so there's only a couple characters really. So you're all good. No offense taken here. I actually, now that you mention her as a character, why? I think I know the answer to this, but I want to hear your answer. Why did you kill her, and why did he bring her back?
yeah. So I mean, I'm sure people got her name was Marie or Mary because obvious reasons, right? I
I
actually,
did get that. I'm not so irreligious that I didn't get that.
yay. I
Phew.
did toy with the idea that there were going to be, I did little things like the guy who sprains his ankle in football is Derek Roman, like he was on the wrong side. He was on the other team. He was a Roman. Um,
Oh, okay, I didn't catch that, but
and
clever.
there was a piece of me that wanted to write a bigger story, a novel where, I don't know,
Maybe one day.
yeah, maybe one day, but I wanted to do things that sort of reflected biblical moments, right? Or things that could have been biblical moments. Um, and I I thought it was important. There needed to be honestly, that scene was the hardest thing for me to write. Everything else was very, very clear. I knew that I had to write something that was sort of a massive transformational event that really truly illustrated to Deek that Troy was something beyond special, that this was, you know, massive power that we were talking about. And I realized like I probably erred a bit on the side of making it sound too superhero-y in a way, but I wanted there to be an incident um, where Troy did something extraordinary to save Deke, and then Deke does something extraordinary to save Troy. Like Deke jumps in front of the bullet, right, and is killed, and uh, and then wakes up and he's okay, and the evening is over and everything has been fixed. And I just wanted to use that as a device to basically say like these two guys are so connected to each other that they will. There's no situation in which they literally won't try to save each other and make each other the most important. And that was a way I felt to kind of quickly in the space that I had to illustrate that. And it didn't have to be Marie. It could have been it could have been a guy. It could have been anyone. Um, I just thought that there was something, I sort of drawing on my own past. There was, to me, something very triggering about, this girl has a crush on Deke, and because she's straight, and because society is heteronormative, um, it's almost more okay for her to have kind of an immediate claim on Troy than Deke, who's grown up with the guy and been in love with him forever, you know? And so that was triggering. I wanted to use that as like a trigger for Deke's anger.
Yeah, I didn't think about that, but that the whole heteronormative part and the claim that she would have had
Right.
for, like, 5 seconds that he didn't have after a lifetime, though that totally makes sense. One last question, and then I wanna know if there's anything I haven't gotten to that you wanna say. Um, Deke never comes to terms with the fact that he's gay. It's just a given that he loves that he loves Troy. Do you envision a backstory where he sort of there's a dawning on him of, like, as he goes from a 9-year-old boy who just, you know, is with his best friend to realizing he's in love with his best friend, where there's a sense of guilt or shame around or fear or doubt Or is it always just he is, and it's a neutral that he is gay?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't mean to portray it as neutral, necessarily. Um, in my mind, he struggles greatly, right? But it's sort of a silent struggle. And, I probably should have put it in because I think it would the line could be drawn from sort of the silent shame and secret struggle to why he ends up turning to things like drug addiction and sex addiction. Um, because that feels very real to me. Like that
Yeah.
connection, I think, in the gay community is a very real thing. Um, but again, it was sort of I would have these moments where I'd like look at the word count. I'd be like 8,800 words. Jesus, like this is gonna
What
be.
have I done?
What have I done? I've never, like I struggle to get five sometimes for a short story. But this was there were just so many ways in which it could go big that I really tried to just tailor it and keep it. I really wanted to get to those certain key moments. The the experience in the meadow where you know, where Troy is literally showing Deke a world where Jesus did pass the cup and did not become the sacrifice, and the world kind of continues on, and they worship this crazy religion in this other world, and Alexandria is the great old city and not Rome, and and they're on the North American continent, but everything is different, but still humans humans fight and they fuck and they have babies and they go to war and they worship these ideas, and nothing's different really. Like names are different, but nothing else is different. I really wanted to explore that.
Mm.
I wanted the moment of the meadow ascendancy, and I wanted the we're showing you an alternate world where Jesus was not the sacrifice and it didn't really matter.
Interesting. Lawrence, I really do think this could be a novella or even a novel because there's so many themes you could jump into. Like if you really dove into Deke's guilt or ambivalence about realizing he's gay, then the scene where he lashes out at Marie would make even more sense of
Yeah.
like, I had to fight so hard to come to terms with this, and I've loved him in spite of, this going against my upbringing and my blah, 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 and you just get to wander in here and be like, "I'm crushed out on him," and no one bats an eyelash.
Right, right. Like, oh, I want to have his babies, and sort of that horrifying realization of like society would be 100% okay with that. Like,
Yeah.
oh, those wacky kids, Marie and Troy, they just met and they started having sex and got married and had a bunch of babies, and that's the way the world is supposed to be, right? Like,
Yeah.
and Troy, Deke would then be there, like, oh my God, everything I've loved them forever, and none of that meant anything because that just isn't the way society is coded.
I didn't read that, into the story probably because of my lived experience as the straight, white, heteronormative woman, but that's fascinating. I love that. Lawrence, what have I missed and haven't asked you about that you would like said about the Book of Deek before we sign off?
I think I think we've unpacked it pretty well, and I hope we haven't spoiled it too much that people don't go read it. It
Yeah, you shall go read it.
it was it was a really deeply personal thing to write. I will tell you, you know this because I confessed it to you, that the moment, the kind of the morning that I was writing the scene where they're finally admitting their love to each other and where they realize that Troy has to make his decision and that it means that he's going away. Um, I was weeping. I was absolutely sobbing at my computer writing that because it really, really moved me. And because, as you correctly diagnosed early on, this is me writing my sort of idealized love story that I didn't have in high school or college or after college or ever. Right now,
Topic
right?
for another
Everyone,
podcast, kid.
play the violins.
A topic for a future podcast.
Yeah.
Well, everyone should go read this story. It's on Gen Xy in the creative section. It also should still be at the top of the page.
Yes.
It is called The Book of Deek. and that's Deek with a Deek, as the narrator tells us right at the start. It's a wonderful short story. I can't believe you have a muse who just delivers you story bombs like this. I wish I had one.
Yeah,
Tell them
they're
to come visit me if they wish,
okay. I will. Be
and
careful what
maybe
you wish for because they like to kick people in the heads with stories.
I
You
can
will get up and write this.
I I'm obsessed with your muse. I think it's the coolest thing ever that you have a muse. Um, Before we sign off and go, start our days, let's see, housekeeping. Tomorrow is Fucked Up Friday.
Woo woo!
I think I have my story. Do you have your story,
I've
Lawrence?
got my story, and
Great, and we've got Ben joining us, Ben Ulancy. I think I'm saying his last
yep,
name right.
Ulancy from the Gen Z Report,
The
which
Gen
is yeah, an amazing kind of juxtaposition
Yes,
of the Gen Z Report and Gen XE together at last.
yes, I cannot wait. Oh, Brandon is asking, "Does your muse provide free delivery to writer friends?" Right?
I'm going to say yes. You know, they so often deliver things to me and make me write them that I'm going to overcommit them and say yes, Brandon. My
Y'all
muse will be making a delivery to you and to Dana and anyone who wants a story.
right? Lawrence has
How do you
powers.
like that, Muse?
Yeah, Lawrence has powers, y'all. One day we'll talk about house blessings and just red candles and shit Lawrence has done or has happened around him. Our ghost story. We have a ghost story for the ages, you guys. So, if he says he's going to deliver this muse, don't be surprised if the muse shows up. That's all I'm saying about that.
Yeah, and maybe
Um,
not them. Maybe like in the Muse network, they like put out a, you
right.
know, an alert, and so the Muse nearest you will show up.
Oh my God, I love that. Um, I assume the muse has moved with you wherever you go, though. They just know how to find you.
Yeah, the Muse has been. Oh, our friend Fasun has just joined. Hello.
Hello.
Just as we're wrapping up, I'm sorry. Um, the Muse has moved with me wherever. Yeah, and
I
um,
absolutely love that.
yeah,
So, to go back to our housekeeping stuff, yes, Ben Ulancy will be on with us tomorrow for Fucked Up
fucked
Friday.
up
I hope
Friday.
he's got a good story because there was a lot of fucked up news this week, and I won last week's fucked up off, so I'm the reigning champion. I'm feeling the need to try to hold on to my title, and then
Yes,
Saturday
you haven't received your rhinestone crown yet, but it's in the mail.
I have a tiara here, I should get it,
Yeah, well,
and
I
then
actually have a tiara as well, so I can go get mine.
whoever wins wears theirs.
Right,
Um,
right.
and then Saturday, we have Robin Wilding joining us.
Woo, woo! Finally, we
Cannot
get
wait.
to see Robin and meet Robin in person. Well,
I'm
in person on live. I'm so excited.
so, so, so excited, and, hold on. Good morning, it's alright, I fell asleep in the park. Lots of love. Yes, this is a good one. Lawrence talks about his queer, not quite dystopian spec fiction story that he just published, The Book of Deek.
Right,
So
not exactly dystopian,
no,
which
it's
is
not.
amazing.
It's a I mean, there are parts of it that are sad, but it's actually just this, like, wide-eyed, lovely teenage coming of age story at its core, which I love. So yeah, exciting things coming the next 2 days. When Robin's on, we're gonna talk about Is Gen X Feral? Her wonderful story from a couple weeks ago, and Robin's a millennial, so we're gonna get like, dual generational perspective. Um, Future state, I haven't told Lawrence this yet. Um, so my little dog, Kira here, has a torn ACL ligament. I did not know dogs could do this, but, Wednesday, I'm taking her for her surgery, Lawrence.
Oh no!
I know, so we're either going to need to skip Wednesday or do it later because I have to be there at 6:30 AM. I do have to show you guys how cute she is right now because she's been right here. Can you see how she's, like, on my feet?
Aw, she's such a cutie.
She's just all she loves podcasting time because mama finally just sits still on the couch.
Right, right. She's like, oh my god, Mama's actually sitting in one place for an hour. That's
I
amazing.
know, and she's all groomed. She's got her grooming bandana on.
Very cute.
So, yeah, Wednesday, we'll figure it out, but it won't be at its usual time. Um, and possibly on Thursday. I'm not sure what time I pick her up yet, but I think that'll be later in the day.
Okay.
But yeah, they're going to keep her overnight for observation.
Yes. We've got things in the works for next week. We will have a lineup by Sunday afternoon. We will post our new lineup for next week. Yeah.
It's going to be good stuff. And we are having our what's the word that you use? Your celebration of life for our Lives at Medium. We are going to have that as a theme
Oh
next week.
yes, on Monday,
Me-
the celebration of life for Medium. I'm gonna start being on the episode will start with me on it, and then I'm gonna step away so that we can have two more Medium nominators on the call on the whatever this thing is on the video. So
on the live, we'll just say.
yes, on the live.
Hopefully, I'll be feeling better by that time. Lot of like the nightly dose of NyQuil is amazing. I love it.
And let me say one more thing. Friend of the pod, Fasun has a great article up, a new article on her Substack, Letters from a Prostitute. It's about the attempt by the new mayor of Amsterdam to basically shut down the red light district. And, because Fasun is who she is, it is incredibly well written and very, very poignant and moving, but also very political. And so please go give that a read. It deserves a lot of attention, should be shared widely. So go check that out.
I started reading it this morning, and then I was like, "Shit, it's 6:55. I have to get out of bed." But it is beautiful so far. The part about the I think it was a British drunk guy in the penis costume and the like your skull hurting from rolling your eyes back in your
Right,
head.
right. She could see the inside of her skull from rolling her eyes so hard. I
Yeah.
loved it. Yeah.
Yes. It's again, it's so lyrical, and I haven't gotten to the political part yet, but I will read that later today. I'm excited. So I
All
think that's
right,
it
everybody.
for
That's
now.
it.
Thank you for sticking with us. Lawrence, congrats. I don't know how you wrote that in like 5 minutes, essentially.
I don't
Um,
either. The muse, honestly, when I pay attention to them, the muse does deliver.
fucking muse. Where's my muse? Where's my muse, Lawrence?
I
Um,
if I knew where my non-binary muse came from, I would ask the Muse Network to deliver one to you.
Thank you. Yes. Try if you can. Bye, everybody. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see
Bye,
you
everybody.
tomorrow. Love you, mean it.
Love
Bye.
you, mean it. Bye. Mwah.